Vino Lion Media presents Business First.
Hi all, and welcome to a new episode of Business First with Sonia Aline. I am your host, and today we have with us a master brander, Tyrice J. Johnson, owner of the Belvedere Agency. Welcome, Tyrice.
Thank you so much for having me, Sonia.
How are you today?
Amazing. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, and excited for us to talk about your expertise and your background. One of the conversations that we had offline was about, how much, the industry has changed around things like, content development, marketing, branding, even sales. Like years ago, those were all really distinct disciplines. Mm-hmm. And in larger companies, sometimes the paths didn't even cross. Like they had their own sections. And today, all of that has been blended. All of that kind of melds together. And so what you do really well is helping clients to understand how they can create these brands, create strong brands, implementing all of these disciplines for themselves. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Absolutely. To your point, I think one of the reasons why companies have kind of merged these marketing and sales departments along with branding is it was really genius for the companies because it's a way to save money. Is you just have all of this in-house and you have maybe, 3 or 4 people doing it or one lead doing it. So it makes sense as opposed to having 4 different departments, one doing sales, one doing marketing, branding, and so forth.
And so what happens today, particularly with technology and particularly with social media, so whereas you had experts who were in charge of doing all of these things, mm-hmm. Now a lot of small businesses are really trying to figure it out on their own. Mm-hmm. And so what is it that they should be looking for when they select someone like your company? I mean, when people come to you and say, I need help with my brand, I mean, do people even know exactly what they need help with, or they know enough that I need a strong brand to be out there, right, but I need someone to help me figure out what all of that means?
Right. We get a number of type of clients that come to us. One type of client that comes to us are those that are looking for brand development because they have a product or they have an idea and they want us to kind of help them develop it and then ultimately take it to the market. The other type of client that comes to us are those clients that have an established brand already, and they're trying to reach a different audience or they're trying to grow their brand in a different way. And to your point, social media and online is where a lot of traffic is now. And it's a lot dependent upon what your product is and the age group it is, then that determines whether you maybe take more so to Instagram or to Facebook or to these various types of media. And then also, as we know, with the recent pandemic, a lot of people are shopping online. So it's really important for all brands, whether you have an e-commerce site or something like that, or you just have a service in a different way, that you have a presence online because that's where people are finding you and they're finding testimonials and reviews. And so we kind of help people do that, figure that part out.
I also noticed that which I thought was interesting, that you have a range of clients, but you also have a lot of doctors. And so it's interesting that a number of people in the professional services, I don't know if they always think about that professional services also need branding.
Say that again one more time loudly so they hear you. That is so true.
Because I think that they just figure, if you need a doctor, right, you'll know, or a particular doctor, you'll know exactly where to go. But everyone's shopping for everything these days.
For everything. Mm-hmm.
Right.
That was honestly, Sonia, that was my secret sauce. As when I came of grad school and I started doing PR, for some smaller boutiques and some larger, I realized we did everything from green technology to fashion and all these different things to liquor brands. But what I realized is that there was market that was being underserved. And that was people like these with these professional services, doctors, plastic and cosmetic surgeons and dentists and all these other things where they had these services, but they didn't have publicists that were doing these things. And these were people that obviously can afford PR and they wanted to grow their brands and their practices, private or, larger practices. And so that became my niche. I said, hey, you know what? No one is serving this population. And so I wanted to go into professional services. So yes, you're right.
So was that a hard sell for them?
all of them knew that they wanted to reach a larger audience. And, specifically plastic surgery, because it was a taboo for so long. Like I've been doing this now on my own for 10 years and 5 years prior to that. But it was for a long time, plastic surgery was a taboo. And so people always talked about what they didn't want to look like. So we had to, that's part of branding, is to redefine what the consumer looked at plastic surgery and to know that all procedures weren't necessarily surgical, but some of them were non-surgical. So doing things like that, that's that's all a part of the branding strategy, but repositioning them and then making it more appealing to a vaster audience.
That's so true. A friend of mine and I were talking just the other day, and we were saying, plastic surgery used to be something that only celebrities did, and nobody really talked about it. You could you would just watch the gossip pages, and they would, they would have some doctor talk about who they thought was doing what. But because of the education, right? Because we know so much more about it, it has become accessible to a lot of people. And so I didn't think about that until you just said it, but it has a lot to do with branding. Like, we talk about it a lot differently. We know a lot more. And so it's become accessible to a lot of people. Do your clients have those kind of aha moments as well? I'm sure that would be fascinating for you. Yeah.
Some of them do. And then others you have that just love the limelight. Like, I have this one specific client. He almost thinks he's like the Dr. 90210. So he loves the idea of reality TV. He loves the idea of working with celebrities and showing off like, oh yeah, I did this first. And because plastic surgery is not what it used to be, when plastic surgery was very noticeable, if you remember in the late 80s, early 90s, it was very noticeable. Well, now, as you said, people are getting injectables and fillers and all different types of things. It's just regulars having a gym membership. And the key to a great plastic surgeon is that you can't really tell the work. You're like, oh, it looks like you. And so, yeah, doctors want to show that off. They want to say, yeah, I work with this celebrity. I work with that person. So it's not really a hard sell. And you have those that just love the attention.
So, you mentioned about, working in PR previously, but I'd like you to go back to the beginning, because you actually do have an interesting background where it's easy to see how you've been able to use all of your background to be able to create this agency. But you started in journalism, right?
I started in journalism, yes. So my educational background, undergrad, was journalism, broadcast journalism, and public relations. And so I did that at Mouse College, and I immediately started working for ABC, the ABC affiliate in my area. So I did news, we did production, I did producing, and all those types of things. As I told you, I kind of had a problem with the way the stories, particularly for men of color, were being told in the news. And I knew the only way to reshape that story was by doing station management or news management. So I found a program at Morgan State University which specialized in putting minorities in those seats. And I went there to get my master's degree in systems management. And while doing that, I did a public relation internship and fell in love with it. And this is the thing that I think the connection between broadcast and with PR is, one side is covering the news, the other side is pitching various news stories for coverage, whether it's for a client or whatever. And so once I saw the other side, it became very easy for me to say, hey, I know what's newsworthy. I know what grabs their attention. I can position clients in a way that they will cover them. And I know what their brand should be. So that just made it. I didn't think I would do it as soon as I was starting. So I said, well, this will come down the line. I'll create a PR agency. But before I knew it, I had kind of worked myself out of a job because I had so much experience in terms of PR and so much education that no one wants to bring you in at an entry level. And then, the pay wasn't the greatest. I ended up creating my own agency and pulling all of those tools together, as you said.
So did the agency start off as a PR agency?
Always started off as a full service PR agency. We've been there for 10 years. I knew that was what I wanted to do after getting the systems management degree. And I knew that the wave of media and branding a whole was going, first of all, it was melting with marketing and all those different pieces. But I knew that the new wave was going to be online. And so I went to NYU and got a second master's in integrated digital media because I felt that it was going to be important to know how to use various softwares in developing logos and graphics and to be able to code a website and do all of those various pieces because that was the new wave. So to pair that with the PR background made the, perfect storm for me to create this PR agency.
One of the things that you offer that's on your website is also crisis management. And I thought that was interesting.
That's a fun, expensive part. That's a fun, expensive part.
Nobody thinks about crisis, right? Until it actually happens.
Until they're in it. And they have to pay a lot of money to get out of it.
Oh, my gosh. So was that something that you realized from the very beginning that this needed to be a part of what we offer? And was it based on some of your experiences services, or was it based on just your background and your education in what full branding looks like?
Right. Well, to be very honest with you, crisis management is one of those subjects you kind of talk about, but it's not something that they focus on really, really heavily. And, in the classroom anyway. And so I knew about crisis management. I had seen it a number of times with Pepsi, I think in the 93, and with Tylenol in the late 80s, and with Texaco with the scandal. So I had seen it before. And even with the Clintons, I had seen great PR spin stories and to go in and obviously to have a strategy of what you're going to say in-house, what you're going to say. So I had seen that before. So I was familiar with it and I felt like I knew how to do it. But it was not until my first experience with a client and I was thrown into a crisis management, I said, yeah, this is a service that we need to really hone in on, and we need to share with people that we're offering this service, because no matter who you are, if you have a business, you have to kind of forecast for the day that something happens that's out of your control, even sometimes that will happen. And then how do you sustain your business and your brand through that? How do you maintain your reputation, or how do you recover from that? And so it's just something that I felt that all people would eventually need, whether they came to us for that, or if, putting things in preventative things in action so that, we can kind of avoid them if possible. So to answer your question, just make sure I answer your question fully. It wasn't something that we started out with, but then I realized shortly in that we needed to focus more on it.
We could probably do an entire show on how people may not be properly handling crisis that's going on right now.
Yes.
What would you say? And I'm sure you're fascinated by some of the things that are actually going on in the news currently. As you're watching, how people are handling certain situations, what would you recommend for small businesses who don't have the celebrity status? And in terms of what are some of these people really doing wrong in terms of, they have high priced lawyers, they have multiple publicists, and some of the things, just some of them are just handled really, really poorly.
Yes,
where they have to keep coming back and renouncing something, correcting information. What is it that people do wrong in terms of correcting a bad situation?
Right. A couple things. That was a loaded question. There are a couple things. There are people, I'll give you two examples that I love what they were doing, but I think everyone is trying to do this and it doesn't work out for them as well. I remember when former President Barack Obama was running for office the first time. One of the things that they did is they always got in front of the story, no matter what happened, and they addressed everything. I mean, obviously, if it was low-lying fruit, they didn't address it, but for the most part, they got out there and they addressed everything. Another person on a different level was Cardi B. She came from the reality world, and every time there was something that was said about her, she would jump on Instagram and she would say something. And although it seemed very brash, and she stayed ahead of it, and she's been able to maintain a brand, whatever that is. Here's the thing that I think for businesses that are neither in politics or entertainment in that way, that I think is happening, that they're doing wrong. You got to make sure that when you're going to hire a publicist, that you're hiring someone that is equally as invested in your brand as you are, that has a reputation that speaks for itself, and most of all, that they are credentialed in what they're doing. That if something happens, that they're going to put together strategies that are really going to help you sustain and grow your brand. And a lot of times what has happened over the last maybe 8 to 9 years is that being a publicist or doing PR, people almost think of that as just being a handler, or it's a sexy or a manager of sorts for celebrities and for different brands. And that's not it. You really have to know marketing. You really have to know public relations, and you have to know how to put together strategies to grow these brands. And so I think making sure that your publicist is credentialed and that they have a background in it is the first part. And the last part is understanding what your messaging is. And so when I sit down with clients, and that's what I mean about being invested, I want to know what my client's message is. I want to know what their audience is. We're helping them craft that. And my clients aren't taken to social media themselves. That's our agency doing that on their behalf. So then they don't have to retract things because it's very thought out and it's strategic. Everything that we're laying out in the message, that if it's going to the public, it has come across our desk first. So I think that would help you, to not have to recant and go back with these different stories because you have it filtered through your agency.
Talk a little bit about, people who are managing their own social media and what they should be thinking about as they put messages out there. A lot of times they have to recant things because they don't know the source or they didn't know the connection of the source. So, talk a little bit about what things people should be mindful of because sometimes you might see something on someone else's page and go, oh, that's cute or that's sexy and I'd like to add it.
That's the age we're in. No one wants to go get references, and they just think it's funny or it's cute or they go with it, and that gets us in a lot of trouble. We see that in the last election, just reposting information that you don't know is true. I think for me, here's the number one thing I think about with social media. There used to be a saying, they say it, forget it, write it, regret it. I look at social media as something that lives forever. How many times have we seen where celebrities have posted an opinion, in the midnight hour about a subject, or they've chimed in on something on Twitter, only to later become famous or create a brand. And then that tweet comes back and bites them in the rear end. You understand? And so I always think when you put something out, my advice to anyone, regardless of your brand, if you're going to put something out on social media, think about it and be sure that it will stand the test of time and that you can stand behind that opinion. Think about the things. Don't just take every thought and put every thought that you have does not belong to the world. And so think like that when you're approaching social media. And then if you're going to repost someone else's thought, make sure that you can stand behind that, or at least make sure, bare minimally, make sure that it's true.
And I know, I don't respond a lot on social media. I could probably count on one hand the times but if I tell you how painstaking that is for me, I will write and then delete and write and delete, and then I'll research something.
Sounds like a woman that won't be in trouble.
But because it's true. It's like if you were trying to build your own personal brand, right? Mm-hmm. I think about that every time. It's like if I put something out there, and I hadn't articulated it the way you did, but like if someone were to come back and say, you wrote X, Y, and Z, I should be able to say, yes, I did. And this is what I meant. And I'm okay.
And listen, we're human. At the end of the day, we're human and we evolve, right? And so it may be something that you may say, you can later say, you know what, that is definitely who I was in that space. I'm someone different now, and that's okay. But just make sure it's something that you can explain. So how often have we heard people say racist things or things against certain communities that just were hateful and ugly? And then later you want to come back and say, well, now I feel differently, but the sting of that is still there. That's much different than, saying something, what's your opinion, and then saying, hey, well, I have a different opinion now. That's easier to recant than it is to say something that's harmful to a group or to an individual. So another thing to this point while I'm thinking about it is when celebrities do things or specifically around religious or political topics, I don't chime in on them publicly. I encourage my clients not to do so either, unless it's for cause, like things that I think Pray for Louisiana or Black Lives Matter, supporting various causes. I think that's one thing because that's a position that you've chosen to do. But then to go in and to say things about people politically, so I say stay away from that.
The reason that branding and marketing and all of these disciplines are important is because at the end of the day, people want to be able to sell their products and their services. Yes. And so how are you able to have people understand the correlation between, the messages that they put out and the end result, the sale, like how you get the sale?
Right. Well, this is the thing. I think at the end of the day, you're right. To your point, everyone wants to see their ROI, their return on their investment. So if they're going to pay me X amount of dollars a month, they want to see how they're going to recoup that money plus. So here's how we're able to show that. Okay. So if my plastic surgeon, if he's charging $8,000 to $10,000 for a rhinoplasty, I get him into the new, let's just say the Wall Street Journal or the New York Post or a Cosmo magazine. Actually, he's been in those. So Cosmo magazine, now millions of people have seen him. If 5 people come to him, he's made his money back. If 5, which I'm sure if you're in some place like Cosmo or Time or something like that, more than 5 people inquire about you, then you see your return on your money. So that's worth paying X amount of dollars to me, because now you've got, anytime I put you on TV and I'm putting you before millions of people, now more people know your brand, they know your name, and the more they see you, they recognize you. So it's almost a thing of, in a sense, branding is what it is, because after you see something like a commercial 6 times, or they say a name name 7 times on a commercial or 3 times, you remember it. So every time we have our clients in the public's eye, and whether that's print, online, or on broadcast, people start to recognize that brand, reference it back to that message, and they pull it back to that message that we're putting out. And then they come in there, shop their services. That's generally the overview of how we kind of sell what we're doing to them. And then other people, they just want brand recognition in another way. Like if it's an author and they're selling a book, they just want their book taken to the masses. They want it before as many people as possible. And they know that we have the skills to do that.
I had found something on your social media that I thought was interesting, is that you said 80% should be information and 20% should be sales. And I thought that was great, because I think even for myself, I always think that you've got to put everything out there. And so I thought it was interesting that but information is good. So I love that you said 80% of information and 20% is sales. Could you just break down that equation for the audience, please?
Yes. Okay. So here's the thing. When we all go to social media to be entertained. That's what we go there. We go there and, it's almost like a vortex. Sometimes you go in and you get sucked in, you click on this person's page and then you're another place, but you're going because vivid imagery or videos and things that are entertain you, that, pique your curiosity or entertain you. So here's the thing. No one wants to follow you if you're selling something to them all the time. If every post is about buy this has just come out, book this, they want to feel like they're getting something for free. So if you're telling them things and you're giving them wisdom or knowledge for free, or you're entertaining them, they're going to follow you. That's their incentive for following you. And then they're going to say, hey, I want to buy into this, because we're all following you because you're inspirational or you're entertaining. And so once you do that, if I see that you're entertaining, I see all this great work I'm using the sector that I work with, plastic surgeons, a lot here. But if I'm showing the procedures and the before and after, that's entertaining. I want to watch that. And then every now and again, I say, hey, book your appointment today, 50% off. People are going to want to join and buy into that. So that's why I always say 80% information, 20% sales.
So what is next for Tyrice Johnson and for the Belvedere Agency? And are those separate goals or joint goals?
They are definitely separate goals. One of the things that PR is my passion. It's what my educational background is. And for some reason, I call it my ministry too, because I get to help people daily find what they really want to do, what their passion is, and to connect that with their profession. And I like to think that sweet spot is called purpose. So once you get where you're really passionate in the thing that you will do for free every day, and you're able to get a profit off of that and make that your profession, I think that's just your purpose, right? And so I get to do that. And that in itself is my purpose, because I get to do this and to be paid for it. So the Belvedere Agency will always be here. We have an office in New York. We are now in DC. I'm thinking of maybe one more office. I'm not sure if we're going to go back to Atlanta or if we're going to do West Coast, but I like just the New York and the Washington, DC offices. I think that those have suited us fine right now. And I'm also the type of guy that likes to micromanage and have my hands on every client that comes through my office. It doesn't matter who's working with them. I want to work with them as well. So that's that part. But I do have a separate brand that I'm forcing myself now to brand Tyrice, right? And that is with a bourbon. And then there's a show, Drink, Date, Dance, which we're working on now, taking to TV and shopping to a couple different networks. And so we'll do that and we'll see that. But that'll be the other side. But the Belvedere Agency will always be here.
Okay. So I didn't know that you had an office in DC. Is that to attract more political clients? Are you interested in working with politicians?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, niche marketing and understanding that these people need help. And then there were other clients also here, doctors and things like that had practices from New York that overflowed here. And so is what brought me to the DC market.
Okay. Well, then we look forward to hearing a little bit more about the personal brand.
Absolutely.
What you're saying is, so you're expanding into spirits and entertaining. Is that pretty much okay?
So we've been doing that separately from the Belvedere Agency. We've been doing that and working on that. And so the bourbon will be complete, because who knew it took that long to age bourbon? I thought it was just a simple process. The bourbon will be complete the top of 2022.
Okay. So the bourbon it's your brand of bourbon.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, and so why bourbon?
Yes. Well, you know what? I'm a Southern guy. My grandfather loved blues and bourbon. And so, and in his honor, I just said, if I'm going to do a spirits, I want to do something like a bourbon. And I think the older I've gotten, I've moved away from like vodka to bourbon. It's my drink of choice. So yeah, that's why.
Blues and bourbon. You need to TM that, because that sounds like a sexy novel or TV show or movie in the making. I love that. So I'm going to look forward to that, because the spirits industry is, I don't want to say it's not an easy industry, but there's a lot of brands out there.
It is definitely saturated, but the great thing about it is we have an amazing PR agency behind us.
So we are going to have you back and talk about, because there's not enough people of color in the spirits industry, and we consume. We are huge consumers of spirits, and so we definitely want to celebrate you. Yeah. Where can we watch the Instagram shows?
The Instagram show is we go live every week, Friday, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 7 o'clock Central. And it is via my personal Instagram page, which is Sir Belvedere, SIRBELVEDERE, Sir Belvedere.
Okay, well, we are going to follow you and toast with you.
I'm looking forward to it. We have a good time.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. But when you launch, we definitely want to have you back at the top of the year to hear how it's going and hear how this new part of your journey is actually connecting.
Thank you so much for having me, and I love what you're doing.
Thank you. All righty. Take care.
Take care.
The Business First Podcast is hosted and produced by Sonia Aline. Associate producer, Ariel Mancibo. Executive producer, Ken Johnson. Find the Business First Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. And on social at business_first_podcast on IG. The Business First Podcast is a Mean Old Line Media production.